Welcome to Sticky, Stories That Stick. Join me, Amelia Forzak, as I sit down with master storytellers to explore what makes some narratives unforgettable. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Amelia. On the Sticky podcast, I talk with leaders about the moments that changed everything for them and why those stories still matter today. Whether you're speaking, writing, or just trying to connect with others, there's something here for you. Today, I have a very exciting guest with us, but first, I just have to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Pithy Wordsmithery, a boutique firm founded by yours truly. I'm a New York Times bestselling ghostwriter, and I love helping people write and publish their books. My team and I have helped many authors turn their stories into bestsellers and their brands into thought leadership platforms. Our readership is in the hundreds of thousands, so even if you haven't heard of us, there's a decent chance you've read something we've written. If you've ever thought about writing a book, check us out online at pithywordsmithery.com. Today, I have Dr. Jeff Williamson with me. He is an associate professor of marketing at Olivet Nazarene University in Illinois. He's also the founder of Converge Group, Inc., an executive coaching and people development practice. He's also a Gallup certified Strengths Finder coach, Clifton Strength Finders. It's changed in the past years. I'm still talking about Gallup here. Sorry. In 2024, he released his latest book called Joy Cafe, Rediscovering Community, Connection, and Belonging, which I have right here. If you're watching the video version of this, it's a great book. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's good to reconnect with you again.
Yeah, we first met, a couple years ago when you were in the process of writing your book.
Yeah, at least a couple of years, could be even a tad more now that I think about it. But yeah, our paths crossed as LinkedIn connects and ended up being, hey, let's chat. And you were a great help to me in the process of getting my project out the door. And so I was happy to come back and get a chance to talk with you some more.
Oh, thanks. I'm excited to chat. Your book is so interesting. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how it came about?
Yeah, coming out of the COVID era, we were in 2021, early 2022 at the time. And as we all painfully recall, we weren't able to connect much or to get out much. A lot of places were limited or completely closed. And so, coming out of that period, we were all slowly kind of finding our way back into the world. And so, what started as a couple of friends grabbing coffee every month or so at a different place in our community and our area, we started referring to it as the coffee tour. And the more we did that, the more I thought, I should do this on a larger scale. And so that's part of the backstory of the book is traveling around for a year and a half and going to over 60 local one-of-a-kind coffee shops in 15 states. So that's embedded in the book, but that's enough of that for now.
I love that. I think it's so interesting. And I feel like it really speaks to who you are as a person because you love chatting with people and you're a connector. Like you are someone who loves people and finds people interesting. And so going to all these different coffee shops, I feel like is just, did you just love
Yeah,
that?
I really did. I've been accused of never meeting a stranger. I often will refer to people and say they're just friends I haven't met yet. And so, I just that's how I'm wired. That's how I show up in the world. I love connecting with people, as you know, and you mentioned, and I love to hear people's stories. So, the book we're telling story, but it really is telling other people's stories that I encountered along the way that left a extra special imprint on me as I was maybe there for a couple of hours or something like that. So yeah, it's just full of some soul filling interactions that I had over that year and a half that I was out on the road by myself for the most part.
Yeah. So you're really getting to the heart of what the podcast is about is stories that stick and why when we're talking with some people or we're hearing something, why are there certain things about some stories that is it the way people tell it? Is it that what actually happened? But there are certain things where you just cannot forget it for the rest of your life. What's up with
Yeah.
that? Why tell me about that? Because you're in marketing too. So give us
Yeah.
scoop.
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved storytelling. I grew up in a family of many relatives and aunts and uncles and grandparents with big personalities. And so those gatherings of family was always a part of storytelling. And some of them who are still with us, they'll tell stories on me when I was just a little kid. But I love it because when we're a part of a story, that to me, that means we have a place. We have a role in that ecosystem, for lack of a better word. And so I always loved to hear people's stories. I love to be a part of people's stories. And it's a natural that I'm a marketing communications guy because you know this, that marketing and writing and speaking, it's really all in essence a form of storytelling. And so that is just kind of bred into who I've been and was raised. And I just love that aspect of it because everybody's got a story. And I really can't wait to hear them from the next person and the next person.
Mhm. Well, one thing that strikes me about you is you're an easy person to open up to because you are a good listener, and so I bet you do get all kinds of interesting stories from people you just meet.
I really do. I mean, I've got my favorite place here in the community where I live, and I'm there literally almost every day. And my favorite spot, I sit in this corner by a big window, but there are two chairs there. And I do that intentionally because if I see someone who I haven't seen in a while or I know them, I'll say, hey, if you got a minute, feel free to grab a seat and just catch up. Sometimes I'm there so much that, and it's close to the university. So sometimes students will come by and say, I haven't met you, but I see you here all the time, and they just feel like they should know me. And so sometimes I've had these incredible stories just in the last couple weeks of students who stopped by and pulled up a chair for a couple of 3 minutes. So sometimes it turns into 20 minutes. And I love to do that to just say, what's your story? How did you get here? What brought you to this place? And when I zip it and listen, it's magical a lot of times. And so I love that.
I'd love to hear a story that was memorable to you, something you've been thinking about, whether it was like in the past couple weeks, like you said, but just
Yeah,
something that stuck with you.
absolutely. A perfect example of that is one of the students who I now know, who I just met 3 or 4 weeks ago, was exactly what I described. I sit in my spot. Everybody that comes in there knows that's kind of where to find me if I'm not at work. And she came over and said hi. And I met Tess that day. And she's very warm and full of energy. And I said, you're welcome to grab a seat if you got a minute. She said, I do. Well, she proceeded to tell me her story in more. And I just was like, oh, keep going. This is fantastic. And it was like her parents had been born and raised in their early years in Romania during the Soviet controlled era when it was a communist. And they had grown up with all the suffering and the misery that was going on at that time, came to the United States, met here, and now it's her mom and dad. I'm like, I have to meet your parents now because they have an incredible story, right? So all of that happened because Tess stopped by and said, see you here all the time. So shout out to her for being one of my newer coffee friends. But it happens like that a lot. And I appreciate you saying that because I want to be a person that just seems like the windows are open,
Mhm.
or the chair is open and you can stop by and get your bucket filled, as Don Clifton used to say.
Aw. Tell me more about the like how this ties with the Clifton strengths. I'm very interested in that. Your strengths must be, oh gosh, well, I'm not trained in this, so I don't know. Communication maybe might be one of them. What else?
Yeah.
What are your strengths?
Yeah, so my top five are number one is maximizer, which makes sense. I teach, I train, I coach. I love to see people excel to a next level. So maximizer is my number one. Strategic's number two. Learner is number three. Individualization, number four. And then discipline is my number five. And I often say to people that number four, individualization, is my favorite. I mean, I love them all, but I think individualization is my most favorite. And here's why. Someone who's strong in individualization, can have friends, connections, close people all over the spectrum of any spectrum you can think of, right? That having strong skills in individualization, that person, in this case me, loves to see the differences, loves to see the nuances, the unique characteristics about people, and then not just see them, but just love it and to understand that, like, there's nobody else just like you. And that's part of the whole Gallup thing is, the combination of strengths that people can have that are similar but different. And it's almost endless, really. And so I love that so much that I can meet someone like Tess or someone else and just say, I don't know anybody like you. That's just the most beautiful thing ever. And so it really happens all the time. And that's why I say I love individualization, because I I just am not a Barry or Scott, right? If somebody's on a different topic than me, I'm like, my go-to is like, we can still be friends, right? It doesn't have to be a dividing thing. It can just be something that we understand and maybe we talk about once in a while, even if we never really kind of go, oh, I get it. I see why you feel that way. It's
Mhm.
okay if we don't, because I appreciate the unique nature of who they are, what they believe in.
Yeah. And that openness and appreciation for people who are different, or things that might be surprising, or anything like that, I think helps people open up even more to you. You're so accepting, right?
That's been my experience is, I love to say, well, we can still be friends. And I like to figure out where the common ground is rather than what are you against and what am I against and those don't align and all that. I'm like, life's too short, man. I want
Mhm.
people to know what I'm for. I'm for them. I'm for them performing, achieving, just being everything that they've ever dreamed of. And that's where my maximizer loves to help people do that too.
Mhm. You seem like you'd just be like the best marketing professor to have.
Well, I hope so. Every once in a while, I think I'm I'm kind of good at this, and then other days I'm just like they were dead. I don't know what happened there, but we're all going to have our days. But I do love that because I think part of just how I try to show up is they know even if they don't love the topic or they don't love that particular class, I think they know I love them and I care about them. And so when that'll cover over a world of, mistakes. If somebody cares about you, and I will intentionally say sometimes, hey, I'm for you, right? Maybe we've had a hard conversation to say, hey, you missed class 3 times in the last 2 weeks. If you miss two more times, you're going to flunk the class. I don't want you to do that because I'm for you. But I also have to hold you accountable to show up and do the work, right? And
Mhm.
so sometimes in those hard conversations, even it's a great opportunity to say, man, I want you to be successful. And right now you're not doing some of the things that would help you be successful. So, the context changes, but still I feel like I'm coaching people because I want them to be successful.
Yeah. The coach, that's like you're bringing out your
Oh,
partner,
yeah.
with somebody to help them get there instead of it being like an
Yeah.
adversarial role.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any interest in making enemies. I don't have any interest in, all of that stuff. I really just think there's such a shortage of care and true connection in the world. I'm trying to live out what I talked about in the book of, right, that man, we're made for community. We long for connection and a sense of belonging. And I think that's in all our hearts in one form of another. And so as much as I can, I want to help that
Yeah.
happen.
Tell me how you sort of like foster that environment in the classroom.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we often hear when people are talking about being authentic and being vulnerable, which those are really popular words, and I love those words too. Is sometimes that requires me to be authentic and vulnerable, right? So I'll have those moments at the beginning of class. We're a faith-based university, so there are times where I'll say, "Hey, let me pray for you guys before we get started." And sometimes students will kind of go, "Prof, could I have you pray for something?" I'm like, "Absolutely. What's up?" And they're like, hey, my mom's in the hospital. She's really not doing good. I'm really worried about her, And I'm like, okay, well, I definitely want to do that. And then sometimes when something's going on in my life, I've said to them, hey, you guys can be helping me lift this burden that I have right now because I have a brother whose health is really, really poor and he's hit by Parkinson's. So it's one of those things. It's not going to get better. It's just this long journey. And so sometimes I will share with them and then they'll say, hey, how's your brother doing? And so I feel like they feel like if I'm willing to kind of open the blinds and put myself out there and say, man, I'm kind of hurting today, but let's get things done anyway. We can push through it together. I just see that helps people feel like, hey, he's a real guy. You know, he's not just some prop that I have to do work for and move on and doesn't care about me. So I think all those things help in the classroom, in terms of them getting a good vibe that, hey, I'm doing more here than just making sure the four P's of marketing or those kind of things.
Yeah. Yes, I remember just being in school, and it is easier if you feel like your professor actually cares about you as a person and you like them too, and there's like a
Yeah,
sort of like a trust that they're trying to help you and you're trying to show up and
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it goes both ways. When they know I like them, that helps them to, I've seen over the last few semesters, students who were absolutely silent the first time they had me that will now say like, yeah, I was thinking about that, and they feel safer, I think, which is why they'll comment or share an idea in class because I really try to encourage that. It's like, I never thought about that. That's a good question. What do you guys think? Is I'm not pretending just because I have degrees and letters after my name that I know everything because I don't. I just
Mm.
know. I often say I know a lot about a little bit, you know? And I think that kind of gives some space for other people to go. Hmm, I yeah, maybe this is a safe place to share my opinion or ask a hard question because probably half the class is wondering themselves and we're just not brave enough to kind of go. Can I
Yeah.
ask you something? Yeah,
Yeah. Giving space for others is so important, and I feel like it's something that, um,
yeah.
it doesn't always happen.
I don't think it happens accidentally. I think we have to value that and understand how much that means to us, and that therefore it's pretty much for sure that somebody else in the room needs that as well. So it's a gift we can give to anybody at any time to just kind of help them pause and catch their breath.
Mhm. That seems like what you have done with the book so much is, like, give space
Yeah.
for other people to open up.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, it's as you know as well as anybody because you've been riding along on this whole journey with me in multiple ways. But yeah, I think again going back to some of that authentic vulnerability, question everything I've ever known kinds of space that I have lived in, especially during those couple of years. It gives other people permission, but space to think.
Mhm.
You know, I've had bad things happen in my life, and therefore I've questioned things about what do I believe? Is this true or is that true? And I did that in the stories in the book, and Lord knows since then I've done that sometimes. But I think when people see, gosh, there's some similarities there. I've lost a parent. I've lost both parents. I've had a sense of where do I belong now that my parents are gone, right?
Yeah.
That's something that everybody, if they live long enough, they're going to go through that of losing a parent or both parents. So I think people hopefully read that and in those parts went, wow, I thought it was just me, but this dude, he's he's described some things that I've been feeling and walking through, and he got through it. You never get over it, but you work around it. I talk in the book about how our life can grow around the grief and the pain maybe that we're living in life. And so I hope by sharing that and just saying, hey, this was not all great in my life. And part of that story is what's in the book. And I hope it gives people an opportunity to think, well, maybe I can work through this too and see some joy on the other side of this that I'm walking through.
Yeah. I think that's huge is like the stories of resilience. So like showing that you've been where other people are and
Yeah.
making it so that they feel seen. I think we had
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit in another conversation, but
Yeah.
sort of bringing people into stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love to do that, even going back to just, chats at a coffee shop or whatever, when people start sharing their story, um, to say, what's going on in your life that isn't obvious, right? If I know them well enough that I feel they're okay with that question, sometimes they'll say,
Great question.
yeah, well, one of my buddies who graduated a while back, who's still in town, we were catching up one day in the summer, and I didn't know. And I asked him a similar question. He said, well, about a month ago, I lost my brother, and it was a tragic situation. It was all of a sudden, and I was like, I wish I would have known, right? Because we're pretty close. I'm like, you could have told me. I could have been there for you. And so, but people have to feel like they've got a space to do that. And so, when we let somebody share their story and kind of say, hey, man, what's really going on in your life that you wouldn't mind sharing with me? People don't seem to have, oh, I got 10 people that I can share my deep hurt or pain or disappointment or dreams and excitement. I think there's less people that we feel comfortable doing that with than we might otherwise believe. So, hey, if I can be one, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's a great like the prompt. That's what's missing, right? Because sometimes if you have something like that going on, you don't want to just like dump on people if it's not invited.
Right.
Whereas like you're
Right.
small talking and you're like, by the way, and then it's like
Yeah.
something crazy. And so giving people the space where you're inviting them to like that there might be something more on their mind. My friend actually did that for me this weekend. I was visiting her and I see her like a handful of times a year. She's my essentially my best friend. We're chit-chatting and then sort of like towards the end, she's like, "What else haven't we talked about that we need to talk about?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's that invitation to go deeper.
Yeah.
Um, a few weeks back, I had an opportunity to hear Bob Goff, who's an incredible author, has written more books than I've even dreamed of writing. And he was talking about he wears this Boston Red Sox hat. And he in his talk, he said, I don't even like the Red Sox, which is kind of weird because he's been wearing it forever. But he said, I'll tell you who did love the Red Sox. My next door neighbor who lived one door over from us. And for years, we were great neighbors. Well, she was nearing the end of her life with a cancer battle. And she said, I want you to have my Red Sox hat. And so he told that story. And then he went on to say, so what's going on under your hat? You know, ooh, that was so good. I've used that one a couple, three times since I heard him say that, right? Because he's like, there's always more going on under your hat than people may know. And it's like, what's going on in your mind? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? But we don't always say to people, hey, you okay? Really? You don't quite seem like yourself today. So I
Yeah.
just want to be sure. Sometimes you're like, no, I'm good. I just need a lot of sleep last night. And sometimes you're like, actually, I'm not okay. And when we ask, they don't feel like they have to apologize for getting real.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
I think that is something about that is what's missing with when you don't feel like you have community and maybe you work from home, you don't have the
Right.
coworkers that you chit chat with and
Yeah.
like you just don't have that like daily check-in. And
Yeah.
and I think during COVID and maybe even just from working from home in general, that's the feeling that a lot of people lost was that like support system.
For sure. I literally have a coaching client right now who's in 100% remote job and has been for 6, 7 years with this company. And that's part of our conversation. He's like, I'm dying with no outside interaction, right? And so so those are some things that people are dealing with to say, hey, I take a break and walk down to my favorite cafe, or I would just take a walk where I'm around people outside because 100% remote sounds great when we don't have to commute and spend all that money on gas and tolls. But there is a toll. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to use that pun, but it kind of came. Yeah, there is a toll though. And our mental health and our sense of feeling alone, even in a huge city, is very real.
Uh-huh.
And, again, those are some things, loneliness and the impact of that's something that I talk about in the book because I was living it during and since, and so I think everybody can relate to that.
Well, it's interesting because it's not just getting out of your house and being near people, which I think is like most of us can understand that, or it's like, I gotta get out of the house. Let me go sit at this coffee shop. But then you go and you still don't talk to anybody. So that doesn't really like fix your
Yeah.
problem, right? And so
Yeah.
it's not just getting out, but it's also like learning how to um give space to other people and sort of just casually meet people without it being awkward.
Yeah, and I think there's not just coffee shops aren't the only place that happens, but I think it's one of the better places where that happens. And you may have heard people talk about the power of weak ties. And it's exactly what you're talking about is like even if we don't go in some place and have this soul cleansing conversation with somebody, we may go to a familiar place like the place I go. They know my name. They know what I order. I have to tell them before I walk. I almost in the door. It's like, hey, I'm going to get something different today, or else they're going to have my thing going and ready in like 60 seconds.
Hmm.
And that's part of feeling like we belong somewhere. That people see us, they know us, and they want to be good to us, right? I mean, that's a hospitality environment, but people do more than they have to. They don't just take my money and go here, and hand me my coffee. You build those weak ties through relationships and just saying, hey, good morning, nice to see you, how's your day been? That's a weak tie, but somebody feels like you're you want to talk to me, you're asking me how my day. It's actually been pretty good, thanks for asking. I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, that's a win when somebody responds that way. Because who knows how long it's been? Somebody said, "Hey, Amelia, how are you? It's been a while. I love talking to you. Hey, you doing okay?" We did that a while back, and you're like, "Well, this is going on, that's going on," and I'm like, "Think
Yeah.
we have those conversations that it's not work, it's not whatever, but it's just like, hey, you got a life, and I hope it's fantastic. What's going on? You know?
Yeah. People can find that in different places. Like for me, I think that was always like the beauty of workout classes. Was like
Mhm.
always go to the same workout classes, see the same people and build community that
Yeah,
way. Also like
yeah,
walking my dog, that's like a way to chit chat with people. And so
it
um
is.
yeah, the I love weak ties. I don't know if I've heard of that, but yes, totally.
Yeah, it's such a neat concept because I mean I love deep ties and strong ties with people most of all, but we can overlook it. It's not just I talk to no one or I have my tight circle of 6 or 8 people that are everything to me. I hope everybody has that, but the weak ties can get overlooked, and I think that's why that's something I love to talk about because if someone, especially if someone's a little less outgoing and they're not just like filling up every room they walk into, it's just nice to feel like somebody knows something about me. My name, my favorite latte, my favorite seat, all those kind of things fill my bucket. When somebody comes in, I had a meeting just the other day with a lady, and she said she named another person that goes there a lot. She said, "Well, he's a friend of mine, and he told me you're here a lot, so I thought I should try to stop in and catch you here because I've been wanting to talk to you." Hey, all right, it's getting around.
I
So
love
fun. Me too.
that. I feel like that's great advice for smaller towns, but also big towns. Like
Mhm.
I'm here in Chicago and
Yeah.
I was in Greenville, South Carolina this weekend and it just had a smaller town vibe. And my friend's like,
Mhm.
yeah, people know you. Everybody will like get to know you as you live here. And just the concept of that is so, so different. But even if you live in a big city, you can still
For
get to
sure. Yeah.
a little bit smile at people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that going back to weak ties, I think that's where often that sense of community can start. And it can be 2 or 3 blocks right in the middle of the downtown if we go to lunch there repeatedly, if we get coffee there, if we stop in every other day or two. It can happen that way. It may be less so at first, but again, I think when we build those weak ties and then we start seeing people and knowing their name, even if you're in a city of 2 million people, there are going to be neighborhoods or parts of a certain neighborhood where people live in community. They look out for their neighbors. They cut the senior adults grass down the street because that's just the right thing to do. And so I think even in the bigger communities like a, urban Chicago or wherever, community is something we can create no matter what the population is or town. And I do think it comes a little easier in some of the mid-sized towns like where I am, and or university towns. Those are good places too. Even if they're located, there's some great schools and a variety of great schools, universities located right in the heart of Chicago. And I think, some of those places too, they create community in cafeterias or classrooms or wherever. So it can happen anywhere. It just may be a little more challenging in some places, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. What advice do you have for people who are learning to open up and want to tell their stories and connect more with people, but maybe they are feeling shy or just
Yeah, yeah,
vulnerable?
yeah. Well, for one thing, come to Connect Roasters in Bourbon Night and find me. I'll be there, or find. But seriously, yeah, you, when you go into a place, say it's a cafe, they get breakfast or they get a croissant on their way to work, whatever. Is even without reaching out to the other people at first, just be looking for people that seem like the lights are on and they're maybe more friendly than the average person. And you just, hey, good morning, and say, just like my conversation a few weeks ago with Tess, to just say, hey, I've seen you here a lot. I should know you, right? That's more me than someone who's a little more shy. But I think just making eye contact or waving to somebody and say, oh, you're in here a lot, aren't you? Right? Sometimes just those little points of verbal and nonverbal connection, it just crack the door open a little bit to say, oh, I should introduce you myself by now. By the way, I'm Jeff.
Mhm.
And there are so many times where I've started friendships that way, just a little nonverbal. That when you look at people, they feel like you see them. Isn't that a oh duh, Jeff? But a lot of times people don't look at other people, right? Even
Mhm.
if they're not on their phone, which is often where they're looking. But even sometimes folks are just uncomfortable making eye contact, and there are cultural nuances. I recognize that too in different places where eye contact it's seemed as confrontational or that person's not safe. But in others, it's like, person smiled and looked at me. How cool is
Yeah.
that, right?
I feel like we could all do that a little bit more, and I'm totally guilty of the whole big city look down, like right where you're going, focus on where
Mm.
like what's happening, and then I'll go visit my parents in Portland, Oregon, and it's like I'm just snapped back into this other like people are looking at me in the eye and nodding and saying hello, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, hi, like
yeah, yeah.
I'm not
Oh,
in the phone.
Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there a couple summers ago. My nephew got married in Portland, and that was the first time I'd been there. And so, yeah, sometimes you'll go to a place that is a bigger city, but you can still feel some sense of community. And
Mhm.
I love that. So it isn't just limited to, well, if it's under 50,000, you're not going to find over. I mean, you're not going to find community, but
Yeah,
I think community can be anywhere you look for it and take a little chance and make a weak tie or a weak connection and just, hey, right?
I
And
love
get to know people. Yeah, I know it's easier for me, but I think sometimes we make it harder than it really is or has to be, just because we have some fear or hesitation. If somebody's like, "Why are you talking to me?" I'm like, "Oh, okay."
right.
We don't. None of us want that.
We are social creatures. We're made for human connection. So
We are
yeah, take
absolutely. I believe that with all my heart. Even people that don't seem that way. If I get to know them some and they kind of feel a little closed or they're tough guy or whatever, and I'll just kind of say, I know there's a big heart in there, even though you like to act like a big tough man. So no, like don't tell. It's like I see behind your shield, you're not fooling me.
That's cute. Well, I can see you are like the heart of your community, and I love the book. Tell people a little bit more about where they can find the book. And
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can order it through Amazon, and it's available also on Kindle format. And a little cross my fingers. I'm working on getting the audio format out there before the holidays, so hopefully we'll get that nailed down. So you can find the book there. Really, any of the typical book sites online, you can find it there. And so, yeah, love to have you uh, ride along with me and Rejoy Cafe.
Joy Cafe, rediscovering community, connection, and belonging. And Jeff, tell people where they can learn more about you and stay connected.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so LinkedIn is a huge, I mean, that's where our paths cross. LinkedIn is a huge platform for me. So you can just search Dr. Jeff Williamson. Myself will come up if you want to follow along or connect, send that to me and we can share the journey together. Also on Facebook, I'm there as well, Jeff Williamson, and then Instagram is my company Converge, which we've referenced here, but Converge is also under my name as well. So you should be able to search that and find some of the content and come along if you'd like to.
Amazing. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. This is super interesting. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's been a blast. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks. Again, this is Amelia Forzak. I'm the founder of Pithy Wordsmith Theory. Check us back next time for another episode on Sticky Stories That Stick. Thanks for listening to Sticky Stories That Stick. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.